The whole world?
You can't read into my words. When I'm
asking. That's why I asked.
say the word conspiracy. I said there's a certain, it's understood without saying. It's a cooperative agreement. It's something that you understand without voicing. Yeah, I think the word collusion is appropriate, but if you're gonna interpret it as meaning a conspiracy, no, it's not a conspiracy. It's an
I interpreted collusion as meaning collusion. So, collusion, so in other words, it's collusion between the whole world, Jewry in the United States, in Israel, in France, Argentina.
It's not that complicated or that statistically oriented. It's more, this is how we've lived alongside each other for the last 60 years, and it allows, the Jewish community to avoid taking responsibility for any time there is an abuse scandal within the Hasidic community, and it allows the Hasidic community to deal with its scandals without interference from the global Jewish community. And it's comfortable. It's an agreement that feels comfortable for everyone until now. I think now we are living in a time where we have access to the internet. Just an example of the response to my book really shows you the time we're living in, because 10 years ago, if I published a book like this, and books have been published like this, you wouldn't have that kind of exposure, and you wouldn't have that kind of response, that kind of feedback. And the controversy that the book has generated has largely contributed to its sales. Yes, I will admit that. Hating me has made me rich. Thank you very much.
So, but again, you're saying collusion, you're throwing out some nice stuff.
I finish my thought. What I wanted to finish saying was, we live in an age where people are speaking out more, and there seems to be more of a trend to exposure, to attack on privacy, especially as the fundamentalist Jewish community in Israel gains power. I think that's very threatening politically and socially to the global Jewish community. And there's no longer this comfortable agreement between we'll let you do your thing and you let us do our thing.
So it's not Satmar. You don't mean Satmar.
No, I mean the fundamentalists.
Okay, so
regular workers.
Okay, so let's just revise what you said. So it's,
I wanted to explain what I meant by secretive.
No. I'm saying, you said collusion between Satmar and
I didn't say so. I said collusion between both communities.
Okay. So you just have to revise. The statement has to be revised a little bit.
The video.
Later on, you'll speak to Deborah and
To investigate.
We'll make sure to revise our statements down to the last trivial detail so everyone here is content.
No, I don't think it's true. What are you clapping about?
A woman telling them what it is.
A woman saying that she don't take what she said too seriously because she's speaking in general terms, and you're clapping for that. I don't know. Fine. Okay. Good. Whatever. Okay. And then we'll move on to the next question. Okay. So we'll look up the dictionary word collusion later. Okay. So now, some of the things that I do a totally different question, which I wanted to ask, and I think we'll come back to it later, which is so come sit up here. Okay, which is, I'm fascinated, and I think it's amazing the way that you came from a Hasidic community with I think you said a fourth grade mitten education in English writing, and then within a short span of time wrote a book which is now a bestseller. I think it's amazing. I would like you to talk about that because I find it fascinating. But before we get to that question, if you don't mind, I wanted to hit on something before that you said. So there's a question here of revealing details and being salacious, and etc., which you said is something that you did not want to do. And in fact, I think, and I didn't get to that part yet, but that at some point you were very turned off and hurt by the fact that your husband at that point, Rex, went and spoke to his mother about certain kinds of things. And I'm assuming you still feel that was incorrect to do. Well, then it seems very, very difficult to somehow, I wouldn't say it seems difficult. How then would you say, telling those details and other details about not only him, but everybody else in the family, giving them a much wider audience than 2 or 3 people, but giving it to hundreds of thousands or millions of people?
First, I'd like to tell a really funny story. Do you guys know Rabbi Gans, the guy who left Satmar and became Chabad?
What's his name?
He's a rabbi in Earmont. He still has the lavush, like the appearance of a Satmar Chassid. He's got like long payas and a beard. But he actually famously abandoned Satmar and became a Chabad rabbi a long time ago. And at the time, it was a big scandal.
Mendel Wechter.
No. I want to tell a story about something wonderful that he did for me. Rabbi Gans was a rabbi in Earmont right around the time that I decided to separate from my husband. And I came to him with my husband and I asked him for help. I told him the story that many of you have or will read in the book, the story of our kind of nightmarish marriage that had taken place over the past 5 years when I met him. And after we had both laid out our sides of the story on the table, he looked at us with really great compassion and he said, "I can't help you. You're not fighting about who's taking out the garbage. You have real problems, and I don't even think a professional could help you." And it was what made me wake up and realize that what I had gone through was really unsalvageable, and it couldn't be rectified. And it's really interesting to me that you brought up the experience of getting married and having problems, and then having the exacerbated stress of those problems being talked about by my family, by my husband's family, and by our neighbors, friends, and community. It was the moment in my life where I felt truly betrayed. Had I not been betrayed that way, I don't know if I ever would have summoned the courage to do the same, which you just described. And in a way, what I committed is a betrayal. It's an inevitable consequence of doing what I'm doing. It hurts me. I worry about the people who are affected by this book. I worry especially about my son. I'm a human being. Like everything you do in life has consequences. This book had serious consequences. But because I went through it from the other side of the coin, and because I experienced my whole life splayed out before the community and the family, completely public, the parts of my life that felt most private and most painful, that I wanted to possess and control and have as my own, those were taken away from me. Every piece of privacy was taken away from me in my 5 years of marriage. And when that happens to you, you understand the value of that kind of complete, laid-bare honesty, what that can do to you. It can free you. It can free everyone involved. And so I've included experiences in this book that most people would be embarrassed to talk about. There's plenty in this book that incriminates me, that makes me look bad. But I did it for the sake of that greater honesty that brings people freedom. Because in the end, that kind of betrayal, that kind of openness and lack of respect for privacy freed me from a terrible marriage. It gave me the impetus to change my life. And so that answers your question, and we can talk about the fourth grade education level.
It actually doesn't answer my question. It answers the question how it was good for you. It doesn't answer why you can do that to him or others.
Why can he do that to me? How is that good for me?
Because you decided that. You just said
that.
You just said it was good for you and you appreciate it. You can't. How are you deciding that for him?
This is two sides of one coin. This is something I did that people did to me. This is an experience I was taught to be okay with.
But you aren't okay. It's no good. It's bad.
No, I think it's a two-sided coin. I think it has its advantages and disadvantages. I think it has both freed people and given people a voice, and it has hurt some. That is inevitable. It's what a memoir does.
No, you're saying that why can you do this to him? He's not asking for
Into the voice.
Why I can do this to him?
Yes.
I'm not doing this to him because he did it to me. But what I'm telling you is it's the flip side of a coin. I'm not the one who started it.
Oh, so that's you're communicating something that you...
No, it's not about evil. It's the point is if it's okay for you, it's okay for me. He showed me that it was okay. It's not about tit for tat. It's about if my privacy was never respected, then you just get this sense in the community that privacy is not important, that it's not something to be respected. If my privacy had been respected in the marriage, I don't think I would have had the kind of guts to do what I did.
Although Chulent is not an organization, I'd like to make a point of order. That point of order is that we came to hear this young lady read her book. And I would love to hear her read her book. So why don't you ask all of your questions later?
Because she said, she asked me, she wants to only read, you can clap with that too.
I'd like to take questions from the audience.
Yeah, you talk. You talk. Let her field questions. Let her field questions.
I'm going to answer your fourth grade level question next. You can sit down and I'll field questions from the audience. Okay, guys, I'm going to floor. I'm actually gonna address Isaac's question. It's a great question. He asked me how I went from supposedly having a 4th grade level education to being where I am now. And the easy answer to that, and it's in the book.
She's answering your question.
It's reading books. Because I started sneaking out when I was about 8 or 9, and the first books I read were kids' books. But I graduated because for a long time, books were my only friends. They were the only items of joy in my life, and I read every day. And when you read, especially in that kind of environment where your environment is sort of empty of everything else, it's a vacuum, you absorb that information like a sponge. And I remember coming to class, and I write about this in the book, I remember being in 8th grade, and we had a few hours of English education every day, and they would bring in a censored, photocopied excerpt from a literature story and have the girls practice reading. And I remember it would be passed from girl to girl, and the girls would stumble like they were in 1st grade and just learning to read. And when they got to me, I was reading fluently, and everyone was suspicious of that. How on earth is she pulling that off? And I was often suspected of being a rebel just for having a good English. And so I spent my whole childhood and my adolescence reading, and I educated myself. And actually, before I went to Sarah Lawrence, I ended up taking classes online, which actually prepared me for going to Sarah Lawrence. And writing this book wasn't easy. I wrote it in a writing workshop, and I had people give me amazing critique and feedback and really help me develop the characters and develop the story better. I don't think anyone really writes a book, especially their first book on their own. I think it's really a team effort, and I had amazing people working with me, really helping me refine my story and bring the essence of my story to the fore. And now, I would like to invite people to come up and address their questions to the audience one at a time. And if you just raise your hand, I'll ask you to come up. Elke, why don't you come up?
Thank you.
Just finishing your book, I kind of noticed one thing. You seem to have do you have any happy memories of Satmar? It's not even that I'm trying to defend it, it's just, I kind of want to hug you because nobody should live a life that devoid of were there any happy memories at all?
I think there are larger aspects to Satmar life that bring happiness to many people. Sometimes those people are only men. I remember that I've partaken in various ceremonies that were really male-oriented. For example, Simchas Torah. The men had so much fun. They were dancing around. It's like going clubbing. It's like going clubbing on LSD. That's what Simchas Torah is like. And I had to sit up in the balcony and watch, and I didn't get to partake. And the same goes for Purim. When I was growing up, I couldn't dress up. I couldn't get drunk. I couldn't dance in the street. It wasn't fun for me. And then you add on to the fact that I was already an outsider. The happy parts of being Satmar weren't accessible to me.
Why couldn't you get dressed up?
Can you just let's be organized. What do you use? Yes, no, second guy. Joshua, you're next. Second guy, come on up. Don't forget your question, Joshua.
What's your name?
My name is Ezra. The title of your book is Unorthodox. Recently at a convention at the Agudas Yisrael, one of the Rabbanim of the Moetzes Gdula Torah said that if even one generation would not have a yeshiva education, then everything would be lost forever. There would be no more yeshiva bachrim ever again. And it's probably true if they were infiltrated by a sect. Do you think that would be a good thing? There would be no more yeshiva education and everything would be gone forever? Would that be something that would be helpful and we would all be unorthodox? Or would that be, is that something that we should hope should stay forever?
It's a confusing question. Let me think about this. So you're saying, you're taking from the title of my book that I advocate for everyone to get rid of their orthodoxy?
Well, I'm assuming, me myself, I'm not Orthodox, but I know that we wouldn't have any borough park anymore.
The reason we chose the word unorthodox is because the word unorthodox means someone who's unusual, who's against the grain, and that really described my upbringing. I didn't grow up Orthodox, I grew up Hasidic. So when I chose my title, I chose it because I felt like I was an outsider, like I stuck out like a sore thumb, and that's why I chose that word, because I did have an unorthodox life. and I have an unorthodox.
Not a capital O.
Yes, there is no capital. But let me address your question anyway. I don't know a lot about yeshivas. I never went to one. I have met people who went to Yeshiva University. I have met lovely Orthodox people. I think in every community of the world you have good people and you have not such good people. And one of the things I talked about in Anderson Cooper today is about manipulating the system. My problem with yeshivas is not people going to yeshivas. It's people manipulating the yeshiva system to achieve power. And when they corrupt that system, they hurt people. And this is what I want to try to stop. I don't want to eliminate the system. I want to reform the system. I want to make it comforting and inviting for everyone, even the ones who are unorthodox and don't fit in. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry that I'm not going to ask a question, but I want to address Isaac. Where is he? He's not on stage anymore? Where is he? I have to be honest that one thing that I have a lot of admiration for frum people, especially like you, is the chutzpah that you guys have. Pretending to stand up here and ask what about the secretive lifestyle and imply that she's giving a bad reputation or a name to Sadmer. Hold on, let me do the talking. Hold on, let me do the talking. Okay, whatever. We all heard you, and let me rephrase it as I see fit. The bottom line is that when I talk to people, I grew up, I was a teacher in UTA in Southern for 3 years. 4th grade education is a good thing. She was being gentle and kind. I had kids in my class that couldn't read. I used to go and get them textbooks from 2nd grade. The bottom line is when I talk to people now that are not Jewish at all, and I try to explain what frum lifestyle is, they don't believe me. They don't believe in Hilchas Nida. They don't believe that a girl has to embarrass herself that way and degrade herself like this. They don't believe in kaparas. Do you think if Muslims in Detroit were swinging squirrels over the head one day a year, how fast would Fox News be there and how fast would they shut it down? Frum people get away with murder in society. And they get away for one simple reason. Because you are riding the coattails of non-frum Jews. Because everyone knows about Dr. Silverberg, the dentist, and another nice guy who happens to be Jewish and does the Passover Seder. And they think that you're just a romanticized version of that. You have a beard, you kept the outfit from 200 years ago. They don't understand that you are discriminating, you are abusing your wives, your children. They don't even know that in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn, New York, a woman cannot drive a car. Not in Saudi Arabia, in Brooklyn, New York, in the year 2012. And you have the chutzpah, to pretend that this is not a code. You have a chutzpah, she's being kind. I apologize.
We got a rebuttal here.
Throw you out physically.
No, he was bugging us both.
Guys, I don't want to end the event early. I want you to go to the
It's the best thing.
things can get a little pesky. Joshie and what's his name? Take it outside. Anyone want to put a waiver on that? Guys, we didn't come here to watch a testosterone fight. We just want to listen to Deborah. We don't care about your manliness. Nobody cares. Take it outside. This is my Jewish princess, Felicia. She's from Kansas. She's a real Jew. Nick, what do you come up and ask for questions? We're going to finish this up soon, guys, and then we can go outside and start brawling. It'll be a free brawl.
Thank you. By the way, I'm with Josh in back. Good point. All right, here's a question. You said earlier that all the criticism you got actually helped you sell the book. And I'm happy for you because I know the book is great. My question is, do you think that along with the good sales, it also make your story seem like a lie. So many people criticize it as being, not true and all of that. So I believe you and I'm with Joshi, most of the stuff I know firsthand. But do you think that the general public, the secular public, thinks that there might be a lot of lies in there?
Great question. Actually, I think that question has been answered. I think the question has been answered because, okay, the question was, do I think that in addition to controversy and attacks helping me sell the book, do I think it's proved to people or somehow influenced people to think that the book is not true? And the answer to that question is already available because there were various reporters that actually tried to look into these allegations once they came to fore, and all of them concluded that they just didn't stick, or that if they did, it just didn't detract from the main focus of the book, which is the actual story, and not the little facts that keep coming into question. Facts that I explained in the disclaimer have been reordered, consolidated, and compressed. And I think one of the best writers on this topic was Isaac Schoenfeld, who did a follow-up piece for Huffington Post, which was titled "The Hasidic Campaign," the sophomore campaign against me and Deborah Feldman. And it was about all the hate mail he had received after he had published a review of my book. And he actually took the mail seriously. He was like, bring me proof. And after examining all that proof, what he wrote was, why didn't they take me up on my main accusation, which was sexism? Because that's one of the things he had brought up in this article. And it's one thing they didn't want to address him about and didn't want to converse about. And so that really showed him that it was just about creating a hullabaloo and creating distraction. I think a lot of people, any intelligent person, can see that and has seen that. Because if that would have been true, my memoir would not be on the shelf right now. It would be recalled. If I was the next James Frey, like people have tried to make me out to be, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you.
I want more people to ask questions if we still have time. All right, I want to ask one question. And this is going to hey. I'm going to give everybody else a chance. Then we can throw one hardball question. Okay? Because Josh seems to have gotten a little okay, there was an article.
Mic closer to your mouth.
Okay, I will. It seems that there was a thing, something you wrote in a blog about an experience you had at Yiddish farm last year. Okay. You wrote that you had tried to come to Yiddish farm. It's a farm state that has this idea. I'm sorry? It's in Baltimore. Okay? And that they want to have Yiddish as a language. They perpetuate Yiddish. It's not a particularly religious thing. It's a Yiddishist type thing. Okay. And you wrote that you gave it a good hurrah. You tried. For 3 days you whacked the weeds. You cleaned the chicken coops. You put wiring against the foxes. Now I don't know. I wasn't there. But some people who were there told me it's not true. You didn't work the farm, not 1 minute. I don't know if it's true or not. But you didn't work the farm for a minute. You went straight to the kitchen. You said, the kitchen is where I like to be, and that's where I'm not going to do any of this.
Photos! She's on trial here.
I really wish I had projectors so I could show you guys the photos. Here's the story of Yiddish Farm. This is what I blogged about, and I was really clear about this in my post. I got to Yiddish Farm.
Can you show me, Deborah? For the camera?
Yeah, hold on a second.
Is that next to your work circle, by the way?
Hold on one second.
Got proof?
So far, no internet.
No internet.
So far, it's loading. So I'll be happy to post the photo online.
Okay.
The photo is of me and a group of people. We were relocating the chickens that day. We were relocating the gates and chickens so that they change up, the goats and chickens, so they change up the grass, so they don't get the same grass to eat over and over. But it's true. After 3 days, I gave up. But to say I did not work at all, that's just an exaggeration. I worked for 3 days. I will admit, I don't think I had the physique for farming. A city girl at heart, that's what I wrote in my blog post. But I wanted to give it the good old hurrah. As you said, I really wanted to see what it was like and how it would feel. And after 3 days, something happened. The speaking Yiddish, the being around some Hasidic people who were there in front with me, it had this weird effect on me that I didn't quite notice until I was done, which I started lapsing into my old habits and my old manners, and I started gravitating to the kitchen and to the role of wife and mother, because in that environment, speaking that language, that's what felt natural. It felt like the only choice for me as a woman, to really blend into that environment, which was dominated by men. I was one of only 2 women, and the other woman had grown up a shiksa, and so she was totally fine. And yeah, it was terrifying for me, actually. I think it was too fresh. I think the problem was I went back too quickly. I wasn't ready yet. I think if I had waited a few more years and I would have calmed down a little bit, Yiddish wouldn't have been so scary for me. Can we open it up to some more people?
Good answer. Very good answer. I felt like that myself though. When you first leave, you have to...
my name is Mo. I have a question about soccer culture, which is definitely on everybody's mind, but I've been elected the ambassador to bring this question to you. Do Satmars have intercourse through a hole in the sheet?
I love that story. The reason I love that story is I believe that story originates from a Helm story. You guys know the Helm stories? Okay, Helm is like this fictional town that shows up a lot in comedic Jewish literature as a sort of town of fools. And they're always telling these stories about how they, completely misinterpreted a Jewish law. Like they sort of amarazim, so they just had no idea what they were doing. And I remember hearing these really entertaining stories about the town of Helm growing up. And one of those stories was the whole hole in the sheet, where they misinterpreted a phrase in the Torah and decided that that's how it had to be done. That's where that comes from. It's a complete myth. However, I have one story. I had a girl in my class who came from a Rebbish family. She was descended from rabbis. And she got engaged very young, and I remember that there was a lot of gossip when she got engaged, that she had agreed with her future husband to do that. To only have sexual relations with not so much a sheet, but they had special underwear where you would just have kind of like the Mormons. But I think it was just gossip. I think it was because she was so religious. People wanted to make the point, oh, she's so religious, she's not even going to be naked for the husband. But I really, that was probably a once in a while thing, done only by extremely fanatical families who make that decision by themselves. And definitely, no, it's not like they make sheets in stores with holes in the middle.
I heard it started from one author.
Yes, this young lady disagrees with you. She wants to tell me how respectfully she disagrees with me, so I'm going to let her.
I'm not sure exactly how to word this, but whenever I've been brought up in a post-Holocaust survivor Satmar sort of mindset, and we were traditional, but when we had Shabbos and Yontif, it was like Satmar, and
What about the rules and the restrictions?
didn't have that, but it was I had the mentality was there. I felt very repressed. I felt like I had no opinion. I felt I can relate a lot to what you're saying, but my own journey, just like you had your own journey, my journey was one where I felt that this was something that each person goes through life and has to deal with their pekel. And this was my pekel. So I also really believe that there's kind of like a core essence that you have to kind of relate to. In other words, you can't kind of look at the Satmar community with all their problems and then do a blanket thing that this is Judaism. This is not Judaism. For some reason, and I don't know why, and it has bothered me a lot because these are my roots as well. Satmar, for some reason, I don't know exactly how to put it, but there's like an anxiety there, and when you talk about betrayal, I know what you're talking about because I felt betrayed by my whole family. Emotionally, I was just tossed to the side. So I totally understand what you're saying. Why it happens, I don't know. I'm fascinated by your story because it's true. What you're saying is true. But why, I don't know. And it is particular to the Satmar community. I think there's a paranoia there. I don't know where it comes from. Maybe they had many pogroms way back when, and they just kind of proliferate. I just want to make sure I got my point across. So the question is, why are you taking their particular psychological problem and expanding it and saying that they're like, you're putting it into their Judaism. I don't look at it as their Judaism, I look at it as their psychological problem.
Thank you very much. First of all, can I just say, I was really touched by what you said, everybody has to go through life with their peckle. Because I heard that phrase a lot growing up. You gotta accept your peckle. God gave you your peckle, you gotta schlep it around. It's how it is. But what if we can change that? What if instead of accepting the peckle, we can get rid of the peckle? Who says we have to accept it? What if in no way am I taking Satmar and applying it to the broad Jewish community, because I know nothing about the Jewish community. The Jewish community is as foreign to me as the Gentile community. Because when I was growing up Satmar, even if you were modern Orthodox, you were as good as a goy, if not worse. So I don't know anything about Jews. I only know something about the Satmars. I know something about the Hasids. And I will tell you, I think we can get rid of those pekla. I think it's time to get rid of pekla. The Holocaust happened 60 years ago. Let's
70. Hey, good answer. Very good.
So, Deborah, I originally saw your story online. I thought it was very interesting. I see you talking when you first started that you were like, when you were 10 years old, that you were already trying to move out, and you were you wrote and stuff like that. Were you already trying to escape the wrath from a young age, that you were planning on escaping the wrath of the Satmars, or was that like later on?
No, I never planned to escape the wrath of the Satmars because I had nowhere else to go. If someone would have offered to take me in, I might have agreed. But what you're talking about is my parents' marriage falling apart, which started pretty much when I was born. And the first 7 years of my life are still a kind of fog, because my parents had such a nightmarish separation and divorce, and it was back and forth, and it was really ugly. And during that time, I was largely sort of shuffled around from aunt to aunt and pretty much ignored. And at that point, I guess you could say I was almost living on the street in a sense. And so if anyone's going to be saying, oh, well, I remember when she was 8, she wasn't living at home. I wasn't. I was being shuffled around a lot because there were problems at home. But that wasn't me running away. That was me being an 8-year-old. Not really in control.
When you say peckle, like everyone has a peckle on their shoulder, what does that mean? Like they have to get the monkey off their back, or
the monkey off their back?
Does anyone here know the word Nisoyan? Like you're given a test in life, like everything is a test from God. So I was raised to accept everything bad that happened to you because it's destined that way. It's a test from God, you have to withstand it. So if you have a child that's going with a problem, you just got to put up with it. You don't try to get rid of it, you put up with it, because God gave you that to test you. And so what I'm trying to say is, why don't we change our attitude? What if it's not a peckle? What if it's a challenge to overcome? What if it's a experience that makes you stronger and better? You know what I mean? How about we stop kvetching and start dancing?
I think I know what you just said, but I'm not sure.
Quetching? Oh, you gotta know what quetching is.
The resolution, I think what you just said is that if you had a problem and you had a baby or whatever that was born with disorder, make the best of it. But that's your peckle, right?
Right.
No.
Hashem gave me this tutus, like, oh,
He's gonna ask what Nebuch is. What's Nebuch?
You know, a pity, such a pity, like that God cursed me with this terrible task and I have to bear it. But what I do is, if you know, every hardship in my life I've taken and I've turned into something wonderful. powerful. Instead of having a negative attitude where I have no power and it's all God, I'm like, no, God gave me these things to make something beautiful out of them, to change the world, to really just turn them around into gifts and blessings. And so I wish I'd grown up with that attitude because, like she mentioned, the whole Stockner paranoia, that mentality,
I gotta see.
that's sort of,
There you go.
Relic from the Holocaust with pogroms, that eats into you. It becomes a part of your everyday life, and it's very hard to shake that attitude. Anybody in the audience who hasn't gotten a chance to ask a very urgent question, throw a white butt over there.
Dude, come on. You got 3 for price on. Sit down, sit down.
I will get the shoes after.
I guess I'm probably more understanding others of these. Do you anybody, I'm from Hungary.
Can you speak up, please?
So it was excellent. Do you anybody in the book mention your relationship with God and whether you are a believer? I don't really care if you're religious or not.
Hold the mic to your mom, hold the mic.
I'm just asking her if she believes in God.
Oh, don't go there.
So yes or no?
I think in various parts of the book, I do talk about not understanding the concept of God that I grew up with, and I just read a portion of the book that really talks about it. It's like, my understanding of God never meshed with what I was told about God. Because in my head, God wouldn't do this shit to us. But towards the end of the book, I do discuss like increasing ambivalence and just a growing confidence that everything I've been taught just didn't quite fit and didn't quite make sense. And it was really up to me to go from there, because I had to start from scratch. If everything I was taught was completely baseless, then I really had to start from the beginning. And I did. It took me a while to get here. When I left, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that there was no God, because I felt that I couldn't live without one, that I couldn't make meaning out of my life without one. But then I realized that was a crutch for me. It was a way for me to feel like I wasn't 100% responsible for my life. I wasn't the one it all came down to, because I could always blame it on God. And so I decided to stop taking the attitude and start focusing on myself and my son, and not always putting it on some greater being so that I could blame and that I could attribute to. And I think today I'm proud to be independent of God. I think I've let go of that crutch, and I feel relieved to be here.
You're humanistic.
Yes, sir. He really deserves this point.
Deborah.
My name is Charlie Rolla, and I admire the things that you said. I haven't read your book yet, but look forward to reading your book.
One credit card.
Good. Oh yes, I have a question. I have a statement. And the statement is that I feel that what you're doing is L'Shem Shamayim.
Ooh, that's a compliment.
And if you continue to learn Skovim and learn Judaism from Skovim, not from Jews, you will see that it's L'Shem Shamayim.
Amen, amen.
Yes, what would you like to say?
The Mora mentioned before that regarding the fish story in New Square, that you changed the dates of flip the narrative. I understand that you want your book to be read as not nonfiction, so you'll know the questions. Me as a reader, how should I think? Like, where do I see the narrative end, and where the fiction and where is not?
Good question. Everyone wants to know where the lines are blurred. It's considered something standard in a memoir. It's a standard disclaimer that every publisher puts in a memoir, because it's something every memoir writer does. They reorder the timing of events, they recreate dialogue, and they eliminate things that would make the narrative feel burdened and clumsy. And what I'm going to ask you is, did it really impact the way you receive the story because I changed the timing of the fish? The fish is the fish.
True, but it's such a minute detail. Why is my
Again, it's a tiny minute detail, which means I can overlook it because it's not important.
You believe it as it is.
Well, if I left it as it is, I would have disturbed the continuity of the narrative because I went from 9/11 to the fish. That's a 2-year space. I would have to fill 2 years in there to go to that story.
I understand, so it's fit better with the narrative. The question is, how do I reach the now? Is it like...
You read the book exactly the way the disclaimer says. The events are true, but the timing is different. Again, the disclaimer gives you all the details. It says, the names and identifying characteristics of everyone in this book have been changed. While all the incidents described in this book are true, certain events have been compressed, consolidated, or reordered to protect the identities of the people involved and ensure continuity of the narrative. All dialogue is as close an approximation as possible to actual conversation that took place, to the best of my recollection. That answers all your questions. We're going to take one more, and then we're going to sort of, I'm going to take some books out and sign them for anyone who's interested, and we're going to, schmooze amongst ourselves. You with the blue shirt, why don't you come here?
What's your name? Seymour, what's your question?
Okay, when people talk about, the facts, right? Forget about the history of the fish, that some people have problems with the personal facts, right? You didn't go to town your Zayda is really still alive now, walking around, he's not an invalid. Your parents didn't leave you until you were older and you stated in the book.
Let me ask this question.
Okay, I know that from people I know.
No, I actually would love a chance to address this.
Okay, so let's address the first point. A lot of people have been saying that I'm not really entitled to tell my story because I didn't attend Satmar in preschool. I only started attending Satmar when I was 10 years old. To that I will say the book actually starts when I'm 11. It doesn't cover any of the time before that, and so I opened it in Satmar school. Would I have felt it necessary to talk about the earlier times, I would have mentioned to you the events that took place in those earlier times. As for my parents living when I was older, my parents, their marriage exploded when I was born, and that was a messy undertaking that lasted for 2 decades that I was largely not involved in. And probably most people in the community know more about my parents' marriage than I do. In fact, I recently obtained my religious divorce, and the scribe at the Beth of America recognized me and said, "Oh, I know your uncle, he lives here, and I know your aunt, she lives there, and I know your cousin." And he was like, "You know more about my family than I did." And I was overwhelmed by that. But yeah, it's true. There's a lot of gossip in the community, and they probably know more about my life than I do now because I was a child and I was clueless. I was unaware. I was being controlled and manipulated by my extended family who didn't want me to know what was going on. And I think you mentioned one other detail.
Grandfather.
My grandfather. I mean, we were in the book, do I mention that he's an invalid?
I can read, but that's people.
Oh, you didn't read the question. Okay.
I actually don't say anywhere that he is. I mean, the last time I saw my grandparents was Purim of 2009, and while they seemed weak and frail, they weren't sick per se. I've heard recently that they are, but I don't know for sure. But nowhere in the book do I actually make any claims to that. So we're gonna wrap this up. It was really, really great to come out here and meet all of you with your dissenting opinions, and the diversity of your voice is really incredible. I'm really honored to be part of this, and I hope to meet all of you personally at the signing.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody very much for being here. Okay, there are books to sell over here. There are books to sell.
It'll be on video.
Please ignore.
Good job, Yitzchak. Good.